Okay, so this is introductory video for the T-34-76. Over here are the parts you need to or the things you need to construct the T-34, which before it's painted will look like this, and after it's painted will look something like this. So, and over here are the tools. Basically the tools that you need to construct it. And I'll go through each of these things individually. So for parts, this is a cereal box. The glossy side, you want to use fairly rough sandpaper to sand, not the glossy side off, but just to scratch it up to assist gluing. I've got a matchstick here. It's a Fireplace match. It's not a super thick one. They're available in a very, very thick style and sort of a medium style. This is the medium style. They're just a little bit larger than an average bamboo skewer, which is this. I've got 6 flat toothpicks here and 1 round toothpick. Now there's a few either or options in here. You can either use 20 11mm buttons or 12mm buttons if you have them, but 11mm are the common kind. Or these rocket candies. You can have 10 of these, although it usually takes about 15 to get 10 good ones. So 10 good rockets or 20 buttons, 11mm buttons. And you need a couple of 8 or 9mm buttons in addition, so they're slightly smaller. These are soft snowflakes. They're just snowflake confetti. Comes in a variety of shapes and sizes. You may not be able to get exactly these ones, but it does look nice to have something. I'll show you where they are on the vehicle here. On the back, to just give a little bit of a tribute to those drive wheels there. You'll need about a 5.5mm sphere of modeling clay or plasticine. Now this is a bit of Christmas ribbon, but the important thing is that it's like a ribbon mesh. So you actually want to avoid having a whole lot of this detailing in here, but there's a section large enough that's clean on this to do one vehicle. So that goes back here. So if you can get it without the detailing, it's actually more efficient, but this piece unfortunately has that. But it was $1 for, I don't know, tens of feet of it, so it was cost effective. Now, there's a couple of options when it comes to, where'd my other caps go? Oh, here we go. So, these fuel tanks are made of 12-ring cap gun caps. And then also these front wheels, the rollers there, are made of cap gun caps. So these are required. You have to have these to build the vehicle. The fuel tanks are sort of optional. I mean, it does make it look cool and a lot like a T-34 did historically, but it is kind of a little bit weird for a first timer, so you might want to leave these off. So you potentially need 8, but you definitely need 2. You might need 6 more. You do need 4 of the 8-ring caps, which are a smaller style of cap. 2 of them go back here for the exhaust, and 2 of them attach these rear wheels, or no, yes, attach these rear wheels to the chassis. So you do require 4 of the smaller ones. It's a little bit more either or here. Now this is a tiny little jewel or gem, and it is what I've used for this headlight here. But you can also optionally use Google Eyes for headlights, which is something I have traditionally been using Google Eyes for headlights for years. These I just stumbled upon recently, but they do look good and they're a little bit easier to install. So I recommend, if you can't get the little gems, just use Google Eyes. Google Eyes are cheap, plentiful, and easy to find. So you're definitely going to need one of these little small Google Eyes for this top bit here on the turret. So, I mean, you're going to have these anyways. But if you can get those, they make better headlights. And also part of the suspension is made of gems. Now, I've got blue ones here to show that there are a variety of colors they come in. But you need a clear one for the headlight. These are either ors here. You can either use a 5mm Google Eye, which come in variety packs with the 2.5mm ones. Or I've found these enamel dot stickers, which you can see the difference, although it's not painted, of how that looks and how this looks. This looks quite a bit more like it did historically, but they come in low quantities, are more expensive because it comes in low quantities, and are also harder to find. Like, I only recently just came across them, so you may want to go with Google Eyes at first, and then later on, if you find enamel dot stickers, switch to those. I've got a little bit of tracing paper. You don't require a whole sheet of tracing paper. You only need a very small amount. It's just used to stitch the cardboard frame together, essentially. And you need a little bit of cue card paper, which is just like heavy gauge paper. It's also index card paper. It's the same thing. It's just slightly heavier gauge paper to make some of the thinner detailing. You don't need very much of it, again. You're going to require about 21 centimeters in total of drywall fiber tape. So this is a roll of it. This is what it looks when it's unrolled. And that should be everything you'll need parts-wise to build the T-34, a single one. And that's the early war T-34 76 version. So for tools, and I guess glue and paint could kind of be considered parts, but they're more in the tool division since they're usable for multiple vehicles. Weldbond is the glue that I recommend. There may be other glue that works as well, but it glues lots of different materials to each other very well, and it's, other than super glue, crazy glue, or modeling glue, for plastic to plastic bonds, this does all your other bonding and hardening. So you're going to want definitely to get some Weldbond glue unless you have a more favorite modeling sort of glue that you use. I've got 3 colors of paint here. These are just cheap $1 a bottle paint, craft paints. Green, black, and white. The kind of green doesn't really matter. You can kind of dull it out by using black and white to remove some of the intensity of the color if the color is too bright. Oh, you'll also need, a little bit of silver paint as well. Not very much, but you do need some. I've got a 7mm hole punch disc here, or hole puncher. The size is important. Some of them are 6mm. You want 7 or larger. Generally, 7 is pretty standard. So just watch out, because they do come smaller than that. So you might want to test a couple of things. Now, you don't actually have to own one. All you need is access to one. But you do use one for the construction of the T-34 quite a bit. I've got a little bit of nail polish. Now, color doesn't matter, style doesn't matter. All it is it hardens the modeling clay better than just layers of glue. So you don't even really have to have this. But it does harden the modeling clay quickly and much better than glue. So I do recommend it. I've got a thumbtack here just for poking holes in preparation for drilling them. I've got a 1/16 bit. Now you can see the handle on this is very easy to hold. Try to get these. They're more expensive, but they're highly superior for this work. And I've got a 1/8 bit, and you can see that I've taped the end of it to make it a little bit easier to hold. If you can't get this kind, I recommend doing something like this as a finger saver. I've got a bunch of, and you probably would want more, but for one vehicle this will be plenty, of miniature clothespins. They tend to come apart, which is why you need them, but they're cheap. You can usually get, like, I don't know, 50 for $1 or something like that. And they're widely available. This is a scraper blade, like paint scraping stuff off floors. It's basically a one-sided razor blade. I do most of my cutting with this. And scissors, which should be here as well. This is one of the tools, is scissors. Need these quite a bit. Now I've got needle nose pliers. These aren't used extensively. You could probably get by without them, but I do use them occasionally. A ruler. Obviously a longer ruler than this is good. This is an excellent size and shape for the initial processes, and then you might want a longer ruler for later, although generally you can use the short ones for almost everything. I've got a X-Acto knife. Fairly self-explanatory. You want one where the blade doesn't wiggle around back and forth tons, so you don't need to spend a whole lot of money. You can still get them at the dollar store, but I recommend paying a couple of bucks or $3 at least for it, just so you get a little bit more heavy-duty one where the blade doesn't move around a lot on you, because that will make cutting the pieces out a lot more difficult. I've got some tweezers for fine detail emplacement. I've got a mechanical pencil. It's not used very much, but it's a little bit of marking before cutting some pieces. I've got 3 brushes. This one's really only used in the initial processes. This one's used mostly is what I use as a medium sort of small brush throughout. And then this one's used right at the end for paint detailing. Now, I've found having sort of a medium small brush also effective, about this size, for doing some of the gluing down the detailing, but just use a dollar store brush for that. You don't actually want to use a good brush for that, and it can be a bit of a challenge to find small dollar store brushes that aren't plastic bristle, which is pretty much useless. So this is kind of optional, and I do use this one for almost everything anyways. There's just a couple of steps where I was like, oh, this would be better to have that small thing. So scissors, try to get fairly sharp and good scissors. And a couple of, so a light, so this is 320 grit sandpaper. You could have a little bit rougher than this, but I wouldn't recommend very much rougher than this. And then a rough piece for scouring buttons and the glossy side of your cardboard. And that should cover all the tools and the parts. Once you have all this together, then you're ready to start the creation process. Now, I'm not specifically a painter sort of person, so I just kind of threw this together with these few dollar store paints, but they can look pretty cool, and they're made out of salvaged, and I mean, you might have most of the stuff in your house already, which is really cool. You'll have to get a few things from the dollar store or the hardware store, but not much. Most people can build or start to build a vehicle without even having to go to the store. Good luck.